My name is Phyllis Nielsen, and everybody, I would like you to know that we are going to interview Kevin Kiley, who is he represents the California 6th Assembly District. He addresses California issues. He's an advocate for charter schools. He has introduced Bill AC-9A, which would restore property transfer from parents to their children with no reassessment of property taxes, a confusing ballot proposition, which was recently passed, which removes this protection. So Kevin, I'm going to let you talk for a while, and then we'll come back to you with some questions. How's that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, super.
Well, thanks for the chance to join you, and thank you for everything that you do to promote the cause through your club and in the broader community. I think that's more important now than it's ever been, as we've seen, over the course of this last year in California. A lot of people in the state have gotten a window into exactly why our state has been failing, exactly how dysfunctional politics in California is. And I think it's created a real sense of momentum for fundamental political change that can actually create some durable changes in the way our state government works, and that will improve the quality of life for people all across the state. And of course, the main vehicle for that change that we've seen take form is the recall of Governor Gavin Newsom, which will be happening in a matter of months. And it'll be potentially only the third time in US history that a sitting governor has been recalled from office. One of those other two times, of course, was with Gray Davis here in California back in 2003. But I think that what's really fueled the recall is not merely Gavin Newsom's personal failings, as sort of catastrophic as those have been. And it's not merely the way he's botched COVID-19, as disastrous and as poor as his handling of the pandemic has been, and much worse than any other state. But what's really, I think, the most important kind of underlying motivation for the recall is that everything that's gone wrong here in California the last year with Gavin Newsom and his handling of COVID has simply been a kind of broader and deeper instantiation of all of the problems we already had with our state government. Gavin Newsom has taken all of the fundamental failures of California state government and put them on steroids over a year in which people across the state were paying attention to what the state government was doing like never before. And so I think that's what's really catalyzed the recall and has galvanized the greatest citizens movement in California history, with 2.1 million plus people signing the petition, is that we saw over the course, our state has been on this long-term decline for many years. And this last year, Gavin Newsom brought that long-term decline to a total freefall. And, for years and years, we've lost more and more of our power and our rights and our freedom as citizens to the Capitol, to Sacramento. And this last year, we lost everything to a single person. And for years and years, the architecture of self-government, the American idea of representative self-government, it's just been dismantled by our politicians brick by brick. And this last year, Gavin Newsom brought that, basically the whole thing collapsed. The edifice came crashing down. And, so that's kind of where we stand. But the important thing is that the people of California refused to remain trapped in the rubble. We were disenfranchised, we were dispossessed, but we fought back. And that's what the recall is all about. It's about availing ourselves of this last remaining recourse, the very simple yet powerful tool of writing your name in cursive on a piece of paper. And I've held events throughout the state. I've probably held close to 50 events throughout the state to support the recall, to promote the recall, to help it get across the finish line. I've met thousands of people, many, many volunteers, a lot of people who have never been involved in politics before, but who, were pivotal in terms of helping us amass the needed number of signatures. And we're spending their days, spending every weekend outside of Hobby Lobbies or Walmarts, at places of business, at places of worship, through organized rallies or just spontaneous encounters. And they turned this sea of discontent into a real watershed moment for our democracy, and have given us hope as a state. And we really do need hope. I think if our founding fathers were to take a visit to modern day California, they'd immediately conclude that the experiment with self-government had failed. They'd take one look inside of our state capitol. They'd take another look under any major freeway overpass, and they'd connect the dots. Corruption leads to decay. That's a long-standing story in history. I mean, California not only has the worst homeless situation in the country, actually 9 times larger, our unsheltered homeless population is, it's 9 times larger than the next largest state, but we have the highest poverty, just about the worst inequality, just about the worst outcomes in our schools, especially for poor students, just about the worst infrastructure, roads, bridges, water, and everything else. And that was all before COVID. That was before COVID. There was a survey that showed 53% of Californians are thinking of leaving. 53%. And of course, we just lost a seat in Congress for the first time in our history. And this, again, was before Gavin Newsom directed the single worst response to COVID-19 in the United States, if not the larger Western world. And Newsom's response to COVID has been a lot of things. It's been self-promotional. He's used the virus to try to launch his presidential campaign, which is a pretty delusional idea at this point. It's been lawless. He has put our Constitution through a paper shredder with his one-man rule, which is why myself and another assembly member, James Gallagher, took him to court and won a trial against him last November for abusing his emergency powers. It's been corrupt. Gavin Newsom has kept kids at home longer than any other state just so he could get a pat on the back from his biggest campaign donor, the teachers' unions. Newsom's COVID response has been unscientific. He has had the harshest lockdowns, the longest school closures, and now he's ignoring the CDC's own guidance when it comes to masks. Newsom's COVID response has been incompetent. The poster child for government failure used to be the DMV, but there's a new poster child for government failure, and it's Gavin Newsom's EDD. Newsom's response to COVID-19 has been partisan. He's used the virus to fan partisan flames. And now that, of course, is his response to the recall, as calling it a Republican recall, when in fact, hundreds of thousands of Democrats and independents have signed this petition. Newsom's response to COVID has been hypocritical. Of course, people will think of the French Laundry, but that wasn't just some lapse in judgment by Gavin Newsom. It's a parable for the decline of modern California, where we have politicians who have one set of rules for themselves and another for everyone else. And finally, Gavin Newsom's response to COVID has been deadly. Because of his unscientific and corrupt management of the pandemic, California has had the 5th highest excess death rate of any state in the United States. So I see the recall as, of course, an opportunity to correct these extreme abuses of the COVID era, but I also see it as an opportunity to move past the long-standing and overcome the long-standing abuses that got us to this point, to turn the page. I think this is a chance to end the era of corruption in California. And that's why Newsom and his cronies are panicking. It's why they're so just maniacally worried. I mean, when you look at their arguments against the recall, they say it's been something to behold. They've said it's the California coup. I mean, a vote of the people, they call a coup. They've said we're trying to overturn a democratic election. Well, we don't elect people for life in this country. They said their strategy was, quote, all about reducing signatures, which, sounds a lot like voter suppression. They've said, that it's going to be too costly, too expensive to do a recall. Well, we could have had 400 recalls with the cost of Gavin Newsom's EDD fraud. So, these people, our corrupt political class, and the special interests that they cater to, they are absolutely terrified of a free and fair vote. But there's going to be a vote. There's going to be a vote. And the first question on the ballot is going to be a very simple yes or no question. Do you want to remove Gavin Newsom as governor of California? And, that's a pretty easy one in my view, but that's why a recall is Gavin Newsom's worst nightmare, is he's running against himself. There's no place to run, no place to hide. His scorched earth tactics aren't going to work. And then, of course, there is a second question on the ballot as to who the replacement would be. And like many Californians, I'm looking to see if there's someone who has the ability to get this movement across the finish line, who can embody the essence of the movement, who has the tenacity to take on our state's corrupt political class and the humility to restore power to the people. And that really, to me, is what this is all about. The most important job of our next governor is to make it less important who the governor is by returning power to local communities and to the people. And, I think that will be a new day. It'll be a brilliant dawn out of the darkness of this past year. That's what the recall is all about. It's about reviving those forgotten words from our Declaration of Independence, the consent of the governed. It's about revitalizing the whole idea of citizenship. It's a revival of liberty and self-government. It's millions of people saying with one voice, enough is enough. It's a refusal to accept the inevitability of decline and failure as we, the people, take matters into our own hands. So this is a movement not just to fire America's worst governor, it's a movement to save America's greatest state. And I happen to think California is worth fighting for. And I know that people all across the state and folks in your club and your area do as well. So we've already made history, and now comes the fight for California's future. Thank you very much.
That was a very interesting talk. We did get some questions that came in. So I'll start with the first one. This is from J.R. Davis. He says, do you think the recall of Gavin Newsom will succeed in removing him from office? And if so, who do you think should replace him? Also, I'm concerned that the Republicans will split their vote. What can be done to prevent that? And what do you think are the chances that Newsom will not be recalled?
Yeah, well, those are good questions. And I think that, yes, we have a real shot to recall him. I mean, just look at the way he's behaving. He's clearly worried. He's panicked. But it will, be a battle, because Newsom and his cronies, they've controlled our capital for a long time, and they have all the advantages. They have all the built-in advantages, and they're trying to tilt the scales in their favor every way they can. And Newsom is going to have an unbelievable amount of money to work with. Just yesterday, he got $4 million, $3 million of it from Reed Hastings, the guy with Netflix. So, they're going to throw everything they can at us. But that's why we've just got to be resilient, and we've got to be prepared to fight that much harder. Now, as far as the replacement goes, yes, there are a lot of people who have stepped up to run so far, and that's not a surprise. I mean, when we had the recall in 2003 of Gray Davis, you had 135 candidates. But what happened there is it sort of naturally sorted itself out. And at the end of the day, there were only 3 candidates who even got over 1% of the vote. And so I think that at this stage, where the recall is still several months away, it's probably not going to happen until November. I think I'm more than happy to see a lot of folks jump in, because ultimately we're all on the same team. The first question on the ballot is about removing Newsom, and we have to get over 50% to vote yes on that question, or the second question doesn't matter. So everyone who throws their hat in the ring to be a candidate is really first and foremost part of the same team to make the case for removing Newsom, to make the case for fundamental change in California. And as far as who ultimately the standard bearer will be at the end of the day, I think that voters will, make that decision for themselves, and it'll be the person who best embodies that desire for fundamental change.
Thank you. Good answer. Okay, here's another one along those same lines from Pat McCone. She says, is our Republican state GOP leadership focusing on vetting, getting behind, and grooming a best Republican candidate for our party to promote, back fully, and support to win and replace Newsom?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a lot of people who are focused on, figuring out who the best candidate will be, and who are, watching the field as it emerges. And I consider myself in that group. I'm looking to see if there is someone who can, provide what I think is needed in order for the recall to be successful. But ultimately, I don't think it's the job of sort of party insiders to sort out who the candidate's going to be. This is a movement that did not rise up because of party insiders or politicians. This is a citizens movement. That's why it's happening. It's a grassroots movement in every sense, where you've had 2.1 million people who signed this petition. So I really think it's the job of the people to figure out who the standard bearer is going to be. And I think that, you're going to see over the next few months, some people will gain traction, others won't, and the field will sort of naturally winnow itself out.
Okay. Here's another one from J.R. Davis. Can you discuss the subject of vaccine passports? I think most of us agree that the government should stay out of that. But what about private venues? For example, should the organizer of a concert or other public event have the option of requiring attendees to be vaccinated and present proof?
Right. So I've actually authored the bill, AB 327, to ban vaccine passports. And I think it's a terrible idea. I think it's a way to sort of extend the ethos of control from this last year into the indefinite future. It's raised concerns from the likes of the ACLU, even, who've called it the gateway to a sort of checkpoint society. Some have likened it to the sort of social credit system you see in China, and it's inevitable that once the system is in place, it'll be exploited for other uses in the future. So I think it's very important to nip it in the bud right now, which is why I authored this bill. And in fact, there was a poll just a few days ago showing that only about a third of Californians want to have a sort of government-imposed vaccine passport system. Now, as far as the issue you raise of private businesses, whether they can do so on their own, I think that there's also an argument to make that that should not be something that is acceptable, that you're requiring folks to submit personal health information just to go about daily activities. I think that's a very, for example, Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature have banned that, saying it's kind of like discrimination on the basis of race or gender or age or anything else, which is not allowed by law, that you shouldn't be allowed to discriminate on the basis of vaccination status either. So I think that is kind of a question that maybe is that public opinion is a little more divided on, whether businesses should be allowed to do that on its own, let alone whether it's actually a good idea for a business to do that. But I think that, what's most important is that the government doesn't get involved in this, because I think that that is a very dangerous road for us to go down.
Sorry. Here's one from Bob Lindner, another question. Since there are so many illegal people in California, what can be done to ensure that non-citizens will not register to vote? Or if they do, how to investigate that after the election?
Well, that has been an issue with the DMV, for example, where they do the automatic voter registration. And I know a lot of people have raised concerns about this and other facets of our elections integrity. I can tell you there are some good groups that are working on trying to address that. For instance, the Election Integrity Project is very deeply involved in trying to assure fairness in our election process, and it's actually recruiting volunteers to do things like poll watching, I believe. Also, Rick Grinnell has recently started a group called Fix California, and one of its planks is election integrity, to go in and clean up the voter rolls in each of the counties. So there are some efforts really underway to try to keep a close eye on that.
Okay. What are your plans for the future?
My plans? Well, I want to get Gavin Newsom out of office. That's my focus right now. And I think that, it's sort of not even sort of a fruitful exercise to plan for the future beyond that, because we're going to have a very different future depending upon whether that happens or not. If we're able to remove Newsom from office, then it's a whole new playing field. I mean, that's going to reshuffle the whole stack deck of our political system. And so that's kind of my goal for the near future, is we need to get Newsom out. And then at that point, I think there'll be a whole new world of possibility for actually bringing some sanity and some decency to our state government, and to, get California moving in the right direction.
Hope you're right on all that.
Yeah.
You are vice chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. What do you think is the fate of AB 486, which would amend existing AB 486 and replace gendered terms with non-gendered terms and make various other non-substantive changes to provisions related to those persons.
I can't say I remember the specifics of that bill off the top of my head.
Okay, thanks. What is your opinion of AB 1591, the Elections Omnibus Bill?
Also, I don't know the specifics of that off the top of my head. I'm sorry. We vote on hundreds and hundreds of bills, and a lot of them I probably haven't even seen yet. So,
okay, well, that's all I have for today. Well, here's another one. The governor's proposed budget is likely to be approved before the deadline of July 1st. You are on the budget committee. You're a busy guy. What is your opinion of the budget's expenditure of the $101 billion one-time surplus?
Well, it's the governor's plan is one of the worst I've ever seen, and he's even been dishonest about the surplus. He said it was a $76 billion surplus. He went around all last week parading this $76 billion surplus, and actually a few days ago, the state's nonpartisan legislative analyst said, actually, no, it's not a $76 billion surplus. It's half that. And that doesn't actually account for all of our unfunded liabilities. That's hundreds of billions of dollars in debt that's off the books. And so, and then even though Newsom claims we have this massive surplus, he's still dipping into reserves and spending $12 billion in reserve funds. And he's using these expenditures not to make the sort of investments that would actually help our state and improve our quality of life, like really improving our infrastructure, or, improving the efficiency of service and state government, or trying to get propel economic growth. He's basically just trying to, give these, sugar highs to various constituencies, handing out money in an arbitrary way in order to, many people believe, curry favor right before the recall vote. And so it's maybe the worst budget I've ever seen a governor propose, which is saying quite a lot, since we've had some pretty terrible budgets. And the size of our budget has doubled in just the last 10 years, more than doubled. And now Gavin Newsom wants to bring it up to a record high $267 billion. What I would like to see is we give taxpayers back the surplus, but in a way that permanently lowers taxes and creates a more stable tax base, while actually, planning for and trying to propel economic growth and get our economy back to full tilt as quickly as possible.
One more thing. Getting back to the introduction that I had for you, it talks about AC 9A. Mm-hmm. Okay, which would restore the property transfer from parents to their children with no reassessment of property taxes. It's a confusing proposition, and it was passed, which removes this protection. Can you give us some more information on this?
Sure. Well, this was a provision that was kind of just tucked into this broader proposition on the ballot last November. And the vast majority of people didn't even know it included this, because the Attorney General uses very confusing and often misleading language to describe what it is we're voting on. And it was sort of a deal worked out by various special interest groups that we would, take away this protection of Prop 13 in order to generate more tax revenue. And then they came up with an insider deal for how they were going to, divvy the money up. And what's happened as a result is a lot of folks who are hoping to pass a property or a home on to their kids are seeing that when they do so, it's going to become a taxable event, which is something that most people do not like, that idea that death is a taxable event. And so, it'll reassess your tax base from, your Prop 13 tax base when you originally brought the property, from the date of the transfer, when your kids inherit the property, which could cause property taxes just to skyrocket, to go by thousands of dollars, make it impossible for you to hang on to the property. So this will, basically result in families having to, get rid of properties that have been maybe in their family for generations, and all as a tax increase that resulted from something that wasn't put before voters in a forthright manner. So I'm simply saying that voters should have a chance to vote on this item directly, whether we want to, keep this change or go back and have the protection that has been in place for several decades.
Well, thank you. You've done a great job, and we appreciate everything that you are doing for this
Oh, thank you
state.
very much.
It's a
Very
lot of
kind.
work. I know you're a very busy man. So thank you for giving us this time today.
Of
So-
course, and thank you for being involved and for all of the great work you do.